for Breakout session. We kind of want to have a conversation, hence why we're a little bit more casual. We want to have a conversation as to how do we actually do the things that we just talked about. How is it that we actually go about raising sons and daughters? Because it could just become this really great, like, inspiring word, but at some point we have to all make a decision of, I'm going to implement some things so that we can actually see this be reproduced in our life. There's a lot of vacant seats within the fellowship that require sons and daughters to fill those seats. We all know that that's true. I hear the rumblings of that in conversations with a lot of us. And so we kind of wanted to give you some practical insight, some things that we do that we have seen multiplication happen in sons and daughters. To give you a little bit of a context, when we moved from Australia to Canada, we brought 12 young adults with us. They weren't trapped. They chose to come with us. And they were released. They were sent by our church. Like, taking 12 young adults from our church is no small thing. We were the youth young adult worship pastors at the time. Ben was the executive pastor, and I oversaw events. So when we were commissioned and sent by our lead pastor, who is a father to us, by the way, which we can speak a little bit more about later, he also released 12 young adults that we had started being mothers and fathers to. 12 young adults that moved to the other side of the world with us. And I can tell you, it wasn't easy. I literally became mum in every sense of the word. These guys hadn't even lived out of home before. And so we have been practicing this model that we're going to talk about for some time. I will tell you this, we are not perfect parents. We definitely have made mistakes along the way, but our kids, our spiritual kids, know that they're loved. Like, it's amazing what gaps love actually fills. And that's a huge foundation for everything that we have done and modeled and hope to continue to model faithfully. But we say this like knowing, like, these are things that we do. You have to ask the Holy Spirit, Lord, how would you have me parent? Like, when I became an actual parent to my son, I was like, they just give you a baby. And they say, there you go. And you're like, I don't know what to do right now.
It feels illegal.
Yeah, it's like no one's trained me for this.
I had to do more work to get my license to drive
than to have a child.
There's no test. There's nothing.
We were 21 and 22. 22 and 23.
Yeah.
When we had our son, who is the greatest. But it's like we had no idea what we were doing, but the reality of our situation was still there. Like, we still had to make a choice of, I am going to be mum, and I'm going to figure it out. And there's all these external pressures of like, oh, I don't know how to be a mother. It's like, oh, Emma, you just need to be yourself. You just need to actually bring out the gifts and the spirit that God has already placed in you. You're not becoming something different than what you are. You're inheriting this gift of a child. And getting to practice who I am as a mother has been the greatest adventure. I can tell you now that the things we're talking about, it is the greatest adventure. They are also the greatest pains at sometimes, but they are the best. Like, if you have kids, you know how wonderful your kids are. Am I right? Yeah.
I think it's also understanding that there's a moment of decision where you realize that life is not the same with kids. And we can use the term kid biologically or an adopted child, but spiritual kids as well. It's not the same. When we brought Levi home, Emma and I realized that our young adult years will not look like our friends who didn't have kids. Do you get what I'm saying? We were going to have to make sacrifices. We were going to have to reprioritize our life so that Levi and his siblings to come would have the best opportunity to be raised healthy, in love with the Lord, and with a future that is hopeful. But that meant we had to be mum and dad. Mum and dads don't pretend that they're a singularity anymore. They have to make decisions that fundamentally transforms their day-to-day to accomplish the outcome of parenthood. And it's the same with your spiritual kids. When you begin to open your lives up and you begin to take on the role of spiritual mother or father, your life has to be reorientated through the right priority lens. There will be sacrifices. There'll be things you can no longer do or things that you don't get to do. But there'll also be moments of great joy and fulfillment that I believe outweigh the things that we lay down. I was once on a train as a young dad, And I was sitting, it was a commuter train in Sydney, and I was sitting behind a group of young women who were complaining about the cost of having a child. Oh, you have to do this. And they're creating this list of what problem sacrifices look like if you were to have a child. None of them obviously had children, but this is why we don't want to have children. And they're talking about it. And I was like, wild what people talk about. And, while listening to them, I really wanted to say to them as a father, all those things, a lot of them are true. What they don't tell you is when your child looks at you and smiles, all of a sudden the scales are unfair. Do you know what I mean? It outweighs the moment they say, I love you, or the moment they rush to the door when you're home. It outweighs the list of problems when you realize what you gain in that exchange. And so what we want to talk about is this through the spiritual context of raising sons and daughters, because so much of that actually reverberates and is illuminated in the same process. And so we're going to go through a few things first, and then we actually brought what we consider some of our spiritual sons and daughters. They're pastoring within the church now, and they'll join us on stage. So when we go into Q&A, you can ask them directly questions, because I think sometimes the proof is in the pudding, right? And so you get to ask them, and they can answer the questions for you. And the best thing about this is that the questions aren't predetermined, so they're on the fly. You're going to get some raw answers there, which will be good. One of the things I said in my sermon, I think this is where we're going to start off, is that the idea of how we build determines who we build is a truthful statement. And we link that to Zechariah 4:6, where he says, not by might, not by power, but by my spirit. And we are living in a time where there's generational discord around this idea, because we think, or we have sons and daughters, and we're trying to rewrite some of this misconception, who think their budget will determine their outcome, or who think their influence on social media or certain platforms will determine the outcome. And those are might and power restrictions. We're spirit-filled, and what the Bible teaches us throughout Scripture is that those things have a place and they have an importance. However, they are subservient to the Spirit of God. They serve what God is doing. The Spirit of God does not serve them. And so if we raise kids under the eyes of, hey, do we have enough budget to achieve what God's telling us? And we say no to God because we don't have enough money, or we say no to God because there's an uncomfortability in the influence world that we have to sacrifice, then we're raising kids that are deficient, who don't understand what they can achieve in the Spirit. Because the Spirit of God is what allows them to achieve the impossible, to go to all the corners of the earth and preach the good news, to have that radical transformation of turning worlds upside down for the good news of Jesus. That happens in the Spirit, not in might and power. And so when we look through what we're talking about today, it's through the lens, how do we build? We'll determine who we build. And what I mean by that, our belief is the next generation to come should be the most spirit-filled, most spirit-fearing, and the most spirit-encouraged generation that we've seen to date, because it should increase every generation.
Yeah. I think one thing that's really important for us to remember is that sons and daughters is different to developing leaders. It's different to discipleship. Now, you want your sons and daughters to be discipled and to be developed as leaders, but at some point through that process, you want to see sons and daughters raised up. We still develop leaders. We still do discipleship in the church. That is still a function of the Church of Jesus Christ in our life. We still have an internship program. But we also have sons and daughters at the table. And so what you need to hear is that those things can coexist. But what, as Ben was sharing before, what is the spiritual imperative is that we are living out the God-breathed nature in us as mothers and fathers. That one we cannot compromise on. That is about going forth and multiplying. So please hear our heart that you should still be doing discipleship. You should still be doing leadership development, but what is intrinsic to you as the new creation is to be a mother and a father in the faith.
So we say this, we have people being discipled. We also have leaders that we consider sons and daughters of the house, but then there's also sons and daughters spiritually of Ben and Emma. Right? There's clear delineations, and you see that in Scripture as well. Any good theologian, when you read the story of Christ, he had his 12 that he really invested predominantly a lot of his time into, but there were disciples beyond that. There were followers beyond that, and he still interacted with them. There was still a process of moving them in their faith. We just can't be all things to everyone. We can't be mum and dad to everyone. And so there is a process of listening to the Spirit as he brings people into your life for a season for you to be mum and dad. So we're going to go through some more technocratical things right now that I think are good for you to know, and then we'll go into Q&A and we'll sort of share around that. The first one is we've titled Bank Accounts versus Bloodlines. We've been a part of the POC now for 9 years, going on 9 years. This is our 4th general conference. And we've seen different iterations of what God's doing right across those last, better part of a decade. And we've had conversations and we've had seasons where, people have come to us and said, hey, we want to join your church. We've got all these assets, but we have no spiritual transition. And we would really seek the Lord. And 99% of them we've said no to. And they've been within our denomination and in other denominations and independent churches. But it does highlight this idea that there is churches out there that are shutting down, and I say a lot of them, that have full bank accounts and mortgages fully paid off. Right? So they focused on preservation, not multiplication. And so they preserve the asset, but they don't have a bloodline. Their bloodline has died out. And if you look throughout human history, the idea of things being able to grow and expand were always intrinsically attached to a bloodline. And the same applies to your church. There needs to be a spiritual bloodline of sons and daughters being raised who will take on that transition into strength and into greater growth than you. So if you do your job well, that will happen well. But if all you do is steward the bank account without the minds, and we need to be good stewards. That's not what I'm saying. Hear my heart. We do need to be good stewards, but the bank account should always serve the bloodline's multiplication, right? We should not lose sight that at the end of the day, if we do not have sons and daughters to hand things over, we will be like many denominations now that are, do you know what they're doing? Their bloodline are now developers building condos. Isn't that scary? And it's sad. And I don't think it's the heart of the Father to have churches closing down this quickly because we have a spiritual deficit in sons and daughters. And so there is something inside you as a leader that has to remain like constantly thinking about how you're making decisions in light of your bank account and in light of the bloodline of what's happening in the DNA of your church. The next one is we've titled Live, Legacy, Lie. Em, do you want to talk about this or you want to do the next one? I'll do this one. Live, legacy, lie. The reason we've said it like this is that there's this idea that is in a modern church context that you could live and build a legacy that you get to inherit yourself. The irony of that is legacy was not for you to inherit, not your legacy. And it actually cripples how you make good decisions because you're deciding about a retirement plan, not a restoration plan for your city. That's what's happening. And I think it takes the greatest faith to build something you don't know the fullness of. It means you go to your grave and graduate into the heavenly realms, hoping that you gave your 100%, because the next generation will either live in it or fall in it, depending on how you built. And so therefore you build with far greater faith, far greater intentionality, and you become what Paul writes as a master builder of foundation. Someone is going to come along and build upon it. Am I correct? Hopefully it's your sons and daughters. When we think about this, too many pastors are trying to live in their own legacy. But we're called to build things beyond the idea of that we plant trees for the next generation to sit under the shade of. When we think about Notre Dame, the beautiful cathedral in Paris, I think it was over 10 years ago now, it burnt. It was sad and everyone was shocked. But he did some studies into it because that's what happens when something like that happens, you read into it. And I found it fascinating that the designers of Notre Dame had to plant a forest that 100 plus years later would be ready to harvest so they could build the ceiling of this cathedral. They had to plant a forest. And then the next generations had to tend that forest. So that at some point, a few generations down the line, they would, chop down all those trees so that the next generation could use it to build the rafters of a cathedral. They built with that longevity of legacy and mindset. I don't know how to say it, but there's that cathedral in Barcelona that is close to finishing. All right? I can't speak it. I was going to try to say it, but I can't. But I look at that and I'm like, that has taken over 100 years to build. And we are the generation that we will get to see the final capstones put in place. The vision of a man long gone, given to him by a God that is from beginning to end, everlasting to everlasting. That's how our legacy is meant to work. We can't live in the lie that somehow we get to inherit our legacy. If you are building for your own legacy to live in, if I was a betting man, I would bet that you will build a deficient legacy that won't last. I would guarantee it. And if it does last, it's but for a moment. Like the lilies of the field, it will wither up and dissipate. You built with the wrong things in mind and the wrong hopes in heart. Build for your sons and your daughters.
Yeah. The next thing is talking about leadership pipeline. This is something we've been really intentional with, is defining the different stages of how we help progress someone through a leadership pipeline. And I reiterate, discipleship is different to leadership. Okay, so often we try to treat a discipleship problem with a leadership solution. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves, is this a discipleship problem in this individual that we need to tend to? And so it's really important that we remember the nuance there. But we see these stages in Jesus's commissioning of these disciples. It's like, come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. And so the first point is we see this proximity. Follow me. Like, actually come and follow me. Learn from my ways. You know what is the worst photo that I have of myself? My passport photo.
I don't know. There was one you got me to delete.
Oh, like the gooseneck photo, probably.
What?
Age, it's a beautiful thing. But my passport photo is not really like this, like, I'm not using that, like, you shouldn't use that for your online dating profile if you're single, is all I'm saying. Because it reveals everything, it's like true. All your flaws, all of like these things, but it's the most accurate representation of who you are. The most accurate. And I think we've gotten so protective of our image that we don't allow these leaders that we're trying to develop to see our passport photo. Like Jesus said, follow me, like be in proximity with me, be like, let's habitate together. Let's actually be in such close proximity that you can see the wrinkles, you can see all of the blemishes, like you can see when I've had a bad night's sleep or not. And we actually have to get to a point where we're willing to show people our passport photos. Formation, I will make you. There has to be a commitment to remaining and living as teachable disciples of Jesus. You have not finished your lessons. Like, we have not finished our classes. I will die still being a student. That's the posture I take. I do not fully realize the fullness of who my God is and how he has desired to use me. We must remain teachable if we want our sons and daughters to be able to learn from us. And then function, fishers of men. There is this point in their life where they get sent out to practice what Christ has deposited in them. This is the hard piece. At some point, and I say this comforting my husband, at some point my 15-year-old son is going to be a young man that is going to leave the nest and go on an adventure. It grieves our hearts to think about the loss that we will experience emotionally, but it brings great delight to us to know that he will pursue the call of God. At some point in your development as sons and daughters, know that they must fly out of the nest, and you can either release them or control them. Choose what option you would prefer. I know that you would love to be released. So do the same for your sons and daughters. So you need to give them access to your inner life. You need to develop them. Like, we have people around our table and we laugh a lot, but we have to have intentional development as well as laughter. Like, if it was just a party all the time, then we'd just be partying all the time. But you do also have to develop skills in them. And then you have to give them responsibility.
The next point we've called gospel proximity. There's this idea in ministry where we want people to include us into their lives. And so we strive and we take time and we sacrifice to build up trust and relational equity so they will allow us to participate in their lives. However, I do believe when it comes to your sons and daughters of the faith, it has to be inverted. Instead of asking to be a part of their lives, you're inviting them to be a part of your life. It's less about how close and how intimate and how vulnerable you want them to allow you to be into their life, and more about how vulnerable and transparent you'll allow them to step into your life. That is actually where the biggest decisions have to be made in your parenting spiritually. Are you asking them to be developed from a distance, giving them labels of sons and daughters, but never really, and I mean this, never having that idea of gospel proximity? And it's difficult, right? Because one, you have to go through the process of making sure that this season is of the Lord. And then two, there's sacrifices to that vulnerability. It just is. We have had people in our house more often than not. There's some moments, I know for both Emma and I, will come home and we'll be like, why is that person here? Why that one? Anyone but that one. Do you know what I mean?
Very well. I know what you mean very well.
But then the Lord's also like, but also you love that one. And you care for that one. And they have your heart. You're just tired. And that personality type. Do you get what I'm saying? And you form things through the wrong lens of weariness instead of the heart of love and being reminded of why they're in your house and why, because you made space for them.
And I think so often we kind of live in this tension of like, well, I have to be a really good example all the time, right? It's like, as a pastor, as a leader, like I have to represent this pastoral position faithfully. And you live in this tension of like, well, if people are in my house, they're going to see things that maybe they shouldn't see. And that is a real tension that we have to traverse. But one thing that I think we limit doing is actually having a conversation with them. So we just go about passively having sons and daughters rather than actually be like, hey, I want you to be at my table. Like having a conversation brings clarity to the context of the relationship. Yet so often we're like, we'll just like passively see how this goes. I'm like, no, have a conversation. Be like, hey, I want to invite you to my table and I want you in my life and you're going to see the realness of who I am and I'm going to see the realness of who you are and create an environment which actually like is able to sustain that and protect each other in that, not in an unhealthy way, obviously hear me out. But there has to be this conversation. You have to engage because conversation is accountability and commitment. And so you having a conversation with someone going, I want to invest into you, I want you to come and be a son and daughter. Like, do you think Elisha just showed up and just followed Elijah around? No, there was a conversation. It was like, let me follow you. Let me be in proximity with you. There's a conversation that needs to happen. And we can't shy away from these conversations so that because then we're not accountable. We're just passively doing something. And if it doesn't work out, oh well. Like we have to be accountable in our communication as to how we develop these sons and daughters of the house.
I also think like when you open yourself up to that type of investment, you yourself grow exponentially, right? Abraham Lincoln, when he took office, there was a gentleman that was a part of the government that was a real pain in his backside. And he talks about this. This guy would critique every decision he made. And when he finally becomes president, he actually elevates this guy to the Secretary of Finance. And everyone's like, this guy's been like your enemy or been a thorn in your side. And he says, this man has forced me to rewrite letters 3 or 4 times so that I would get the best version of what I wanted to communicate. And he elevated that idea of transparency and healthy criticism or critiquement so that he could become a better version of himself instead of just removing it because it was frustrating or annoying or uncomfortable. He said, no, I'm going to honor it because I want to be the best version of me. And this man's intention wasn't evil, it was accountability. And in the same sense, I think that's what we're afraid of, is that when we allow people into our lives, we have to be accountable to who we actually are. One thing I love that is something that we have amongst our team is that they have a pretty good understanding of who I am. The good things, the bad things, the beautiful things, the ugly things. And it's not even excused, it's worked on. Does that make sense? If you've done Berkman before, they get to see my Berkman. Man, my Berkman is incriminating. My Berkman says that I'll say it straight to you, I'm like direct, but I can't take it direct. What a bad dynamic. So easily offended and easily offending. Like, I got to work on that. But it's good for them to know, isn't it? But like, as leaders, like, I'm not telling my whole church that. There's people there be like, I knew it. But my sons and daughters, of course I'm going to let them in on this conversation. There's parts of these things we have to have. I'm going to let them down at some point. And this is not a please and thank you or a sorry before the issue. This is just like, I'm human. And I need to show you what it means to lead a human that is being filled with the Spirit who will get certain things wrong. And therefore, I'm never too proud to apologize. But I also want to be somebody that doesn't have to live this, I'm a demigod to these people. I'm not. I'm really not. And so this idea of parenting and gospel proximity, we take them on trips with us and meals, and we work through conflict and we pray with them. And anyone out there who like pastors with the idea that you can't be, exclusive, that's not real. Jesus had exclusivities to him. Reasonable exclusivities, where he said, I will disciple these ones more intentionally and more intimately than others. That's going to happen in your ministry. You just have to give it right language. You just have to learn how to lead beyond the exclusivity. You just have to actually live in the discomfort that there's going to be people that don't like the fact that they're not included. But you have to lead that. That's a part of leading. What you don't do is whitewash everything and reduce everything down to a straw man version of leadership. And what I mean by that is the most fragile reduction so you offend nobody. That's not how it works. You're going to parent. You're going to have time with them. You're going to have repetition. You're going to have correction. You're going to model good things. You're going to repent in front of them from bad things, because that's what children need to see and live in. Occasionally we inspire them. Right? Hopefully.
So we want to kind of pose a question to you, and you don't have to answer this to us. This is just for your own practical application of this thought. But like, who is in 5 feet of your life regularly? Like, who's in your home? I have one of our spiritual daughters. She's a helper. She loves to help. And she loves to fold my laundry. And the perfectionist in me could be hiding my laundry away as I have people in my house. It's so tiring. It's also just not practical, and it doesn't create an environment for sons and daughters to fully be immersed in your life. So I gave up on getting my house ready for my sons and daughters. I'm like, you're coming over. There's dirty dishes in the sink and there's laundry. And now, not everyone is helpful like she is helpful, but there's something that she so enjoys about being able to meet that need. And do you know what I do? I do it with her. One, because I have to redo it because she doesn't do it properly. But I could just let her be like someone that is like, I'm like, oh, she's just like someone that helps in the house, or she's someone that belongs in the house. And that requires me to sit down with her and fold my laundry with her. And honestly, it astounds me because I hate laundry. She finds so much value in being able to participate in my life that way. Ben loves to cook. He's a great cook. I hate cooking. God blessed me. And he will constantly bring people over for dinner, but they're a part of the process. Hey, can you peel potatoes? And we'll chat while potatoes are being peeled. It's immersed in our life. And then we provide them a meal. And it's not a meal that's provided from the church bank account. It's a meal that's provided from mom and dad. All right? When we started this journey of raising sons and daughters, we were youth pastors. I think we were just youth leaders, actually.
Yeah, not even pastors.
We weren't even pastors. The idea of having a budget available to us, didn't know that existed. Was astounded when I found that. I was like, that's cool. And so you give from yourself, right? You've got to give from yourself, and you've got to participate with what they contribute to your life.
Yeah, and I think it's good to just remind everyone, not everyone that you would call sons and daughters are leading in a church context. Mm-hmm. We have a young man, I say young, he's not that much younger than me, but he's an amazing guy that has really, over the last 12 months become a son of the house of Emma and I. But he's an anesthesiologist. He's not in Like, he serves on a Sunday, but he doesn't live and breathe ministry like some of our other sons and daughters. And the other day we went on a hike, and his phone went off, and it was a unique ringtone. And it was his mum calling, and Emma made comment about, oh, that's a nice ringtone. And he says, oh yeah, I allocate different people who they are in my life to ringtones. My parents have this ringtone, so when I hear it, I know to answer because it's my parents, and it's absolutely important that I get back to them. Ringtone, text message, there's a tone that they have. He says, it's the same tone I've given you and Ben. You think about that. That someone would elevate you to that status in their life because you opened up your home to them. My dad, who is he's in his 70s, late 70s, he went for a walk one day. He was with us in BC, and he didn't come home. And it was like raining. It's like 7 o'clock at night. It's the depths of winter. And this is classic my dad, who just, as he gets older, forgets that there's things that he has to think about. He didn't think about telling anyone. He doesn't have a phone that we can call him on. And so I texted James, this is a young man, I said, dude, I need to go find my dad. Within 5 minutes, he's at my house. And then he's way fitter than me, and so he's running the streets of North Vancouver, which is all hills.
And it was raining. I was driving down the road looking for Ben's dad, and I'm like, is that James? And this guy's just running, looking in every bush, every tree. And I'm like, James, get in the car. It's going to be fine. Ben's dad does this all the time. He freaks out. I'm like, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Anyway,
That's what we do with our sons and daughters. They get to see this dynamic.
do you know what I mean? It's more than just, oh, this is a church thing and they're going to serve a church purpose. No, this is a life thing, and they enrich your life. And where you could see it as a burden or something that you have to sacrifice for, we have learned that it is beautifully deep and rich and valuable beyond the ministry professional context. And in that, we are so wealthy. We're so wealthy.
So the question, who do you have in your life that can sit at your table? Because there's people there that are hungry for it. I remember as a young leader being like, I just so love to understand my pastor more. I'd so love to understand what it is to do what they do.
Second question is, who could finish your spiritual sentence?
Mm-hmm. We have our youth pastor. So our youth pastor, currently, we were his youth pastors. He was the only kid that didn't want to engage in any type of leadership position because his dad was a very well-known politician in Australia, and so he repelled anything to do with leadership.
He was 13 when he came to us.
Yeah, he was 13. He moved to the other side of the world with us, and he now pastors my kids, my children. He got up and preached. We had a youth service because you've got to give opportunity for your young people. And I'm listening to him preach, and I'm like, I'm just hearing mine and Ben's sermons in his own way. I'm like, oh, he sounds like us. And people can often be like, that's my sermon, or you sound like me. I'm like, oh, what a privilege. What a privilege that a son of the house and a spiritual son of us sounds like us. And thank God it sounded good. So who can finish your sentences? Who carries the same spirit as you?
I think the last one, the question you ask yourself, who carries your burdens with understanding? Who carries your burdens with understanding? We all have burdens, and we know there's certain burdens that at different levels appropriate for people to help carry with us. And at the end of the day, a part of vulnerability is knowing that these sons and daughters grow when they help carry your burdens with you. That's a part of life. Jesus allows his disciples to see his burdens, and they eventually have to understand it because they're going to step out into a world where he's sending them, where they need to understand the burdens of life and how to carry them. And they do that by coming alongside mum and dad first and learning the dynamics and the problems and the situations that come from certain burdens. Mm-hmm. So who in your life understands or helps, who can carry your burdens because they understand them to a degree, or they're trusted to begin to learn to understand? These are questions you've got to be asking yourself. Chances are you're probably thinking someone on staff. The problem with this is that we have a almost a conflict of interest there. And unless you can honestly say that person is someone you raised from, their infancy and their faith, they're almost a paid help. And you'd have to really go through it with a fine-tooth comb to see the integrity of that person as a son and daughter in your life. Or are they paid to be there? Because a lot of pastors make a mistake when we talk to them. They're like, this person's my son in the faith. Well, how long you've known them? 3 years. And how'd they get here? I hired them. I'm like, dude, that's a hireling. For a long, that like you don't know unless you test that. And I'm not saying that is an absolute reality, but I'm going to tell you, I've heard of so many pastors that are suffering rejection or breakdown because someone they thought was a son or daughter who they hired a few years earlier went off and did their own thing or ended up betraying them, right? And they're like, what's going on? I thought they were a son and daughter. They used the wrong measures and the wrong schematics. Staffing is problematic as a measure of sonship and daughtership. It's not that you can't have it as a part of it. We have a lot of our sons and daughters that are staff, spiritual sons and daughters, but they didn't start there. Does that make sense? And so you do need to ask these questions and don't think necessarily about the people you've hired to say yes. Let's introduce our team and then we can...
Yeah, we're going to enter into a time of if you have questions, we're here and open and available, but we're also going to bring up some of our sons and daughters. You guys can come on up. I want to introduce them to you. They are the best.
Pastor Matt oversees our North Shore campus in Vancouver and serves faithfully.
Yeah, the question for sake of... we'll make sure that...
Yes. Pastor Matt and his wife faithfully serve in our North Shore campus. Pastor Sarah here oversees our Toronto campus, and then Pastor Anthony is our pastor over our life groups from a central point of view. He helps guide and facilitate life groups right across all our 3 campuses. And so all of them have their own origin stories with us, and are happy to answer any questions that you wish to ask them directly, or you can ask just in general, and one of them will field the question. What you need to know is if you ask a question that I don't think we have an answer for, I will be honest with that. What I don't want is you to think that I'm not going to make up an answer. If you figured out a question I don't have an answer for, well, we're in that together. I'm not going to lie to you. So if you're here and you're hoping that we can answer everything, my hope is that we can give you some insight. But these are our thoughts and our experiences. They're not absolute truths by any stretch of the imagination.
So while you guys think of amazing questions to ask, we might just get these guys to quickly do a brief introduction as to who they are and how we came into relationship.
Hello, everybody. My name is Matt, or Matty, you can call me. I am pastoring at our North Shore campus, but I didn't even meet Pastor Ben and Emma first. I met 2 of the other crazy Australians that came with them. And they found me in a coffee shop that I was working at and essentially testified about what they were doing there, which was that they were planting a church. I didn't know what that meant. I said, what do you mean you're planting a church? What do you do? And they told me it was for Jesus, which, long story short, I had grown up in the church but had left it. And their witness about what they were doing convicted me. I felt convicted by the Spirit of God immediately. And while making them flat whites, began to pray and say, God, I don't want you. I don't want these Australians. But I'm also overwhelmed by your love and that you're around every corner. Served them their flat whites, avoided them for 9 months until Pastor Ben told them, because they kept coming in every second day to talk to me, and I'd just leave. Pastor Ben 9 months later was like, where's that guy from the coffee shop? And finally we met, ended up catching up, getting coffee. And then I met Pastor Ben and Emma. Around their table was the first time I met them. And you made curry. It was really good. Super good.
We actually found a video recently of Eden, our youngest, filming conversation from that meeting.
Wild.
It's wild. I'm like...
Wild. And actually at that conversation you invited me and my wife now, but to a conference in Calgary. But you didn't really know us, but they're like, you want to come to Calgary? It was at that conference that we sensed a call to ministry, but we didn't really know what that meant. But we responded and went to the altar, were prayed over. And then Pastor Ben, you spoke to me and offered a 5-year internship. I didn't know what an internship was, but I said yes.
I also said 5 years because I'm that guy. I'm like, make it so difficult that if they said yes, it's real.
I think I was 24 or 25 at the time, and I was like, I don't know what the next 5 years of my life is, but yeah, I just said yes, and then it was kind of like Mr. Miyagi teaching at that point. I was like, what am I doing?
Wax on.
Yeah. Now I know how to fight.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and I met Ben and Emma through Matt, which is a really full circle moment, but I was working in the film industry in Vancouver and did not step foot into a church for a very long time. I felt like if I did, I might get struck by lightning. And so I saw Matt and Amanda at a workplace that we were all in, and there was something about them. Amanda had just given her life to Christ, and Matt had just recommitted his life. And it's hard to explain seeing Jesus in someone without using the name of Jesus. But if I was to actually give it words, it was like they were confident, but they weren't naive. And they were steadfast, but they weren't dumb. And they were joyful, but they weren't not founded on something. And now I realize that was Jesus, so they said to me, hey, you need Jesus. Do you want to come get coffee with us and with these crazy Australians that we just met? They moved to Canada, they're planting a church, they haven't launched it yet, but we would all love to come around the table. I thought pastors were like the untouchables, like the Avengers. Like, I don't go near pastors, they would want nothing to do with me, so I literally Googled what I should do. I said yes to the coffee, and then I decided to wear white, because I was like, this is gonna be holier. And then I Googled, what are the most popular Bible verses? And I memorized a couple of them because I was sure that they were going to ask me what my favorite Bible verse was. Didn't actually end up coming up. And the whole proximity leadership, I honestly would just put it like we never stopped getting coffee, and that was 8 years ago.
That's awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony. I met Pastor Ben first initially at Summit Pacific College. I was second year taking a church planning class, and I remember I had so many questions for him that during break I'll just keep asking everything to the point that it was actually delaying the session. And then at the end of the class, Pastor Ben just approached me and put his phone on my desk and just said, hey, add your number, I want to catch up with you. And I remember yes, this is the best thing ever. And so I put my number in his phone, and I remembered just the stress of, oh no, I didn't get his number. So I'll just be praying, God, please let this guy call me. He was so cool. Please let him call me. And I remember he actually ended up booking in a meeting with me. So we went for coffee, and it was an amazing time. And then I just spoke the whole time. I'm like, oh, this is cool, asking all these questions. And then at the end of that, he asked me for another coffee. And at that point, I was blown away. I'm like, wow, this doesn't make any sense. So we met again after a few weeks later. And then we met the third time, or after this, at the end of the second time, he said, hey, I want to meet your wife now. And I'm going to bring Emma this time, and we're going to go for dinner. And at that point, I was like, this is insane. And so I gave him his number, my number again, and then we met for dinner that time. And just from that dinner, it just felt very loved. And that day that we had dinner, essentially he just spoke to us, spoke life into us. And at the end, it was kind of those conversations where you have to do something with it afterwards. And then we joined the church family that day, and the rest has been history.
So nice. So yeah, these are, what I love about this is we deliberately chose these guys because their stories are uniquely different. They come from different seasons in life. Matt was a prodigal. Sarah, just Googling everything. And then Anthony was in Bible college. Like it gives you an understanding of how the Spirit works. It's not like, oh, it has to be one type only. And these guys, we love them to bits, but this would be like our third generation of sons and daughters. You know, the ones that we're sharing to Matt were the OG guys that we raised when we were in our early 20s, that in our early 30s, these guys were the ones out there witnessing That's why they came to Canada, because they came as sons and daughters who carried our heart. It was the DNA of our church. And so what we want is, if you want, you can ask any question you like within this topic, and we will do our best to answer it. And you can direct it to any one of us, and we're happy for them to answer it for you. Yes, but we're going to ask you to come to the microphone so that the French translation can hear it.
Greater Montreal area, and I'm presently mentoring actually a pile of people from all different backgrounds that we're working on getting into leadership. A number of them in Bible college courses, and almost all of our church are people who, like myself, were unsaved, came into the church, got saved in the church. When I came into the church, I was a former atheist. Came to Christ through reading Gideon's Bible, given to me by a complete stranger, and left Calgary,
Amazing.
Alberta, an atheist, arrived in Edmonton, born again. And
Wow.
so I remember walking into Evangel Pentecostal Church in Oakville. Pastor Ray Stewart and his son Jamie Stewart, they just loved me and accepted me, and I was rough. I was really rough. And they helped mentor me, and within a short time I was in Bible college and in ministry as a senior pastor. But here's the thing that I still wrestle with, because a lot of the guys I'm mentoring, some of them are former drug addicts, very different backgrounds. Actually, one of them, he helped the police arrest about 184 drug dealers in our town, came to Christ, got free from that, but there's still a lot of roughness there. And, in leadership, we have to have certain standards, like especially as we push them towards credentials. How do you deal with, some of them have backgrounds that not only are rough, but stuff is still coming out that they're having to deal with even in the court system and otherwise. How do you deal with that level of trying to mentor them into leadership and yet deal with some of the rough backgrounds when it comes to holiness and standards in ministry?
Yeah, I think this comes back down to what we were saying before, which is, as a leader, you do have to determine and distinguish what that person is able to achieve and accomplish. We do not have the heart that every son and daughter would end up being a leader in ministry by any stretch of the imagination. And some of them behave or would have behaved and acted in a way that I don't think qualifies them for ministry. But it does not mean they're disqualified from my table. And so there will come a time, and I think that's why it's important for fellowships to have standards for us to agree with, to affiliate with, because there are some people that we can see the call of God in their life. There is definitely a call of leadership, but if the work is not getting done that needs to be done, then as their mum and dad, we just have to remain with them in that long journey towards what we believe's on their life, knowing that they might never fully achieve it. And that's the hardship of, we want something for them, just like your own kids, you want something for them, but if they don't want to put the work in, we don't stop being their mum and dad, but we also have to realign what is achievable in and through them. And that's difficult because we have a language within the church that we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. But there's applications to that theology that I think are misplaced. I can't be an astronaut. No matter as much, Jesus could turn up and he could turn me into an astronaut and he could do all those things, but he would violate a whole bunch of principled processes, right? And I just don't think he's going to do that because I know my God. And in the same sense, when we have young people or we have people in our lives that we're mentoring and we're leading, they're going to have things that either qualify them or disqualify them. Our job is to do our best to get them into the area of life we believe God's called them and help them with the qualification process. But there will be some of them that will never reach the goal, and that's just true. And that's hard. And there is standards, and we need those standards, especially when it comes to leadership ministry. They need to make certain standards. I hope that answers the question.
Hi, my name is Zach. I'm the lead pastor in Truro, just an hour north of here.
Amazing.
I've got 3 kids, 6, 3, and 4 months. So in this age and stage of life, things are demanding at times. My question is kind of related to that. How do you invite people into your life, into your table, while simultaneously guarding your margin and understanding your limits in different seasons of life as they come. Sounds like you guys have a teenager now. I'm sure it's a different age and stage of life to 10 years ago or even 15 years ago when they were young.
Yeah, we did it with our kids, and our kids have benefited from those relationships. I think it's a gift to your family to have other sons and daughters in your house. Like I mentioned, like our current youth pastor was a 13-year-old kid that held my daughter, my middle child. She's socially selective. She takes after her father. When she was,
I'm an introvert, that's all it is.
but he's a talkative introvert. So she would only go to one person outside of mum and dad, and it's our youth pastor. And that was like when she was 2. It's amazing. I watch her now and how much she values our youth pastor. And he sat at our table and he was immersed in like us having to deal with diapers and sorry, I'll be back in 5 minutes. Like it's not a formal relationship. Like there's no like, oh, I've set the table and it looks really lovely. It's like, hey, we're having pizza on the lounge room floor tonight. And there's
Or
so
Henry
much.
set the table.
Or Henry set the table, who's our youth pastor. Help teach our kids to set the table. Like they actually want that. Now you do have to be mindful as to who you choose to invest into your children's lives. Okay, so there is
Qualifications.
Yes, there is qualifications and a sensitivity that you have to have. There was a season in our life when our son was going through puberty where we limited like how often we would have people at certain times come to our house. Why? Because I'm like, I want my son to feel like he can go through puberty without like all these eyes watching him go through puberty in his own home. So there's seasons for it as well. But you still continue in the relationship building, even if they're not like immersed in the same way. Like you have to read the room of every season that you're in with your kids. I would just encourage you, if you invite the right people into your life, your kids are only going to benefit from that. My kids have a rich upbringing and have many people that they can turn to. Like my 15-year-old organizes meetings with Pastor Matt when he's upset about the youth pastor.
Who happens
happens.
also to be like his older brother. Like
Yeah.
it's like such a funny dynamic.
But he can, because Matt and he used to go looking for frogs out at the farm together. So like there's such a great deposit in your family when you invest into spiritual sons and daughters, and I just encourage you to choose carefully, but to make sure that you do open that opportunity up for your own kids.
And it doesn't take more time. It's about aligning the times so that you're essentially doing multiple things in that same window of time. Because you do have a limited amount of time. That's very true. And therefore, for us, it was all about maximizing life with these people. So we included them when I went, if I cleaned my car, they were cleaning my car with me. If I was shopping for groceries, they were coming with me to get groceries. Because these were windows of time they could do life with me, hear from me, hear God's heart, hear what I think God's saying to them, share their issues or their concerns. And it was all happening whilst I was still achieving real life outcomes. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
Just want to add one thing. I have 3 kids too, Zach. I got 5, 2, and 1 month old. And Pastor Ben and Emma's kids invest into my kids. And they love each other. It's actually generational. And I remember being with your youngest when she was 1.5 as part of my internship was spend time with Eden. I learned how to install a car seat. It's just amazing. And so I've lived what you guys have said. And now my kids are benefiting from it. And it's amazing.
That's great. Good question.
It's true. We tell our kids not to have favorites, but Matt's kids are their favorites, so, we're working on it.
Hi there, my name is Gilberto Dimas. I'm from the Edmonton area. Thank you for sharing. I think I've traveled to somewhere between 60 and 70 countries, and at least in those countries I've noticed that the need for spiritual moms and dads is always there. I think some cultures lend themselves better to it than others. I'm not sure our Canadian culture is that easy to work with in that sense, but I do have a couple of questions. I I'm a big believer that you can't be a good spiritual mom and dad if you are not a good spiritual son and daughter. So a little bit, I guess my first question is, who are Ben and Emma's mom and dad, spiritual mom and dad? And the second question is, I think that this is something that we engage in out of fullness and not to fill a void in our own lives, thus creating an unhealthy codependent relationship. I'm wondering how you manage that in your lives. Thank you.
We have a mum and dad, both genetically and spiritually. Our lead pastors back in Australia, and we still call them our lead pastors, Pastor Sean and Linda Stanton. They are the spiritual parents that helped us grow and then sent us out. I had them as my pastors since I was 14 years old, not to the level of proximity that I did when we had left, but they gave us so much opportunity, and I really want to honor them. I'm astounded at how much they trusted us, and they knew that we were going to make so many mistakes. Like, we made so many mistakes, but they just continued to give us opportunity. And to the point that we still, like, we think about them often, even as they come into their later years of ministry, is like, what can we do for them? Like, we're actually actively thinking, how can we honor our parents as they prepare for retirement? It's something that's on the front of our mind. And so they are our spiritual parents. And it was a joint decision as well. It wasn't just I'm making them my mum and dad. We were received by them. And the second part of the question.
Yeah, the idea of codependency
Yes.
is actually quite interesting. I've done a lot of time in the social working world as well as ministry, and I say this, it's a broad paintbrush stroke, but you can actually tell very quickly someone who's doing it for unhealthy reasons. There is an unhealthy longing or desire in a way that manifests that your spirit will pick up quite quickly. And so even in our time in ministry or in social working, the world is very good at emulating something that is trying to be healthy but for unhealthy reasons. And one of those things is this idea of, I need spiritual sons and daughters because I have a vacancy caused by something else, and I think this will be a satiation to that. It's going to satiate that desire. But they make fundamental mistakes, and you could be finding yourself in this. Usually, it's a few things. One, it's not about multiplication, it's about one. It's usually about one or two. And once they have that, the way codependency works, multiplication, the irony about it is that is an antidote to codependency. They don't want more codependence. They want one because it's a selfish thing. And so a key indicator is if they never grow more or never raise more than one or two sons or daughters, it's because they're codependent, and it's not about son or daughter, it's about individual meeting individual need. What you'll notice with us is that we have multiple generations of sons and daughters, because the release component is the component that allows you to establish health, is that you know how to release them, right? If you're not releasing them, you've got a health issue. You've got a control issue. You've got a codependency issue. And I would, like I said, I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would bet that you only have one or two, and you are really holding them captive. And what that need, and that's going to happen in ministry. There's people out there that do that. My prayer and hope is, if that's a situation you find yourself in right now, that you allow the Holy Spirit to convict you, heal you, and set you free, and allow those people to become the fullness of what God's created them to be. But we've seen it. It's a social dynamic that does not create increase; it creates restriction.
And it's a good thing to always examine yourself and go, am I in relationship because they're serving my ministry? Or am I serving theirs? Like, I find the greatest joy when I get to watch Matt and Sarah and Anthony operate in their giftings and in their skill set. And like, I just sit back and watch as they lead people spiritually, and it's just such a joy. Like, it's gotten to a point where I'm like, they've stepped into their own ministry. And that's a really good thing, is to examine yourself. Like, why do you have sons and daughters? Is it so that they serve you, or is there a calling that you would serve them?
And all these guys have had a conversation with us at some point, which is like, hey guys, it's time. It's time. We love you. We're going to stay in contact, but the work's been done. Distance and time can't separate the work that God's done between us, but it is now your season to step out and fly. Sarah, do you want to talk to that?
I do. Yeah. I think one of the things that was so important to me, I require a lot of clear communication. And it was always very clear what that table was. Because if it becomes a passive thing, it just turns into a social club. And if it's a social club, then the release from that is going to feel like rejection. But because I understood from the get-go, where it was very strongly communicated to me that this was not just about being close to Ben and Emma, this was an incubator. This was a launch pad, and so that release turned into empowerment. And now it helps me when I look back at that table, there's not a spirit of bitterness in me, but it's a spirit of celebration of what was. And that language of what could be has now been picked up around my own table here, in Toronto, for my leaders as well.
That's very good. That's a great answer. We should learn that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rishabh, and me and my wife, we got saved from Hinduism, 2017. And we are in Halifax, going to church here. So my question is, when you allow somebody in your close proximity, like you are inviting them home, and laundry, folding laundry and food and all, how do you settle the, how do you, I don't know how to say that. Suppose you are inviting somebody, I'm going out and I met somebody and I'm inviting, okay, let's have a dinner together, and my wife is at home and she is kind of, because house is not in order, right? There are dishes in the sink and, it's not clean, or if I'm giving a ride to somebody and my car is not clean because I'm not that tidy person. So there are, it's clean, but my cleanliness and her cleanliness is different, right? So once in a while is fine, she may allow, but if I keep on doing it, it will be a burden in my heart that, she will be angry. If I invite somebody, she will be angry if I, give somebody a ride because my car is not clean. So these are the barriers. I may not ask someone to come over at my home or to give a ride. So how do you tackle these challenges in husband and wife, and so that it should not be a barrier to, bring somebody in your close proximity?
I think there's two things. There's a logistics issue here that could answer some of the problem, which is make sure you give enough time so that your wife isn't cranky. I get that, because Emma and I constantly are like, hey, we're having this conversation. What's an appropriate time frame to invite someone over? But then there's that idea of being co-mission together. We've had that conversation. This is something that we do together. It's very difficult to do alone in a house context. And so we've, over the years, constantly evolved through our expectations of one another, our expectations of those in the house, and just simple ground rules to how this is meant to work for all of us, and how an invitation works. So we will discuss. If I have someone on my heart that I think should come over, Emma and I will discuss first before any invitation is given. Even in the moment, I'm an impulsive guy. I'm like that guy. Like the candy bars at the checkout are for people like me. Do you know what I mean? Whereas you don't need that, but it's there. That Wonder Bar is calling your name, and I'm like, dude, I don't need this, but they've put it there because I'm impulsive. We've learnt that I'm impulsive, and so there's rules around my impulsive nature. One of them is, if I have a sense, I first come to Emma and we talk about it. And then Emma brings some level of discernment to it, which I need. Because I'm all in, and then I'm someone needs to talk me in, what's going on here?
Or I air my cautions. We had this recently where we were considering adding someone to our table. And I just actually needed Ben to hear he needed to hear some of the frustrations that I have with certain personality aspects. And then I needed to air it and get over it. essentially. Like, there is an element of like, we've said yes to this together, and I just need you to be aware that there might be a moment where I'm like tapped out. I'm like, all right, I'm out of here. Like, that's real. Like, we're not saying that this is like picture perfect all the time. We have all sorts of personalities in our house. Some that I get on with really, really well and naturally, and I don't have to work at. And others that I'm like, I'm gonna have to put in some work here and lay down my own personality preferences.
Or we work out a game plan. Like, instead of like they can't come over, it's like, that person, I just need a buffer right now.
Yes.
Like, just give me a buffer, and I'll just play defense for Emma.
Group
Do you know what I
settings
mean?
are great.
Like, I'm just like, I've got that. That's good. It's usually Emma playing defense for me, but that's fine. Like,
But any
constant comms.
relationship, if you're married, you know this, every relationship requires compromise. Like, our marriage is not built on my preferences. It's built on our compromised preferences because we have to serve one another. So, for instance, when we have people at our house and they do the dishwasher, do you think that they put things back in the right drawer? No, they don't. But at some point I had to be like, Emma, is this something you're gonna get frustrated with like every single time? Or are you just gonna be like, treasure hunt, like make
it's
this
a part
fun?
of the process.
So there are compromises that you will have to embrace. Like, this isn't gonna be a comfortable walk in the park of like, everyone just fit into my world. Like, anyone that's had kids knows that there is compromise as to how you then go about living your life. And so that is a factor as well. And so I think having agreed upon compromises is probably helpful.
The last thing I'd add to this, I know we're running out of time, is that Emma and I rarely have just random people at our house. We have sons and daughters come over, but if we're meeting somebody and we feel like just having a meal with them, we'll always go out for that meal or find a different setting for that meal. One, because there's always so many people in our house. We want to give our kids space and time when it doesn't need to be that way. And two, we understand the fact that there is a level of intimacy there. And as pastors, we need to create certain boundaries that I think is healthy for us as well. And so if it's just somebody that we're like, it's good that we get a meal together, it's very low chance that we're going to have them at our house. Just because we have so many spiritual sons and daughters over all the time, and we'll get fatigued. We'll go out for dinner and we'll pay, and obviously and all that type of stuff, but we'll make space for them external to our house because it's a relational thing. It's not a proximity thing for us. And so it also takes the burden of making sure the house is cleaned all the time and food's ready. So I hope that helps.
Hi, I'm Kalen. I'm some guy from Yarmouth. And I really appreciate what you guys said. It really speaks to what my generation needs. And the reason why I think there's such a gap in ministers being risen up is because there isn't that closeness. And I just wanted to ask your spiritual sons and daughters, if you have fatherhood or motherhood wounds, how you learn to receive love from your spiritual father and mother, and how to navigate gaining trust for them.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the heart of it is remembering the Holy Spirit's work in the whole process, right? He recognizes the wounds, he recognizes the brokenness, but one of the blessings that have happened, even just being a son and daughter of the house, is I learn a lot just being at the table, right? My family upbringing wasn't, like, I have amazing parents, but the household was quite split up because of divorce and conflict and all these things that were happening. But to have a household that you're invited in and to be like, oh, we can actually sit down and have dinner. So for me growing up, we didn't actually sit down and have dinner. Like I said, my parents are amazing, but a lot of times they were working and there was just different situations. So to be invited into a household where you can actually have a meal together, it took me a while to actually realize, wow, this is a normal thing. But I also see that as the grace of God creating that opportunity. And so I think I can speak from the lens of being a son of the house that has grown up in an environment where I didn't have all the things that I'm experiencing in this setting. One of the biggest things that I've had to learn is realizing that I'm at the table. Right? It's by the grace of God that I'm at the table. And I got to process those wounds, and I got to process the things of the past. But there's a point where it's on me as well to say, hey, I'm at the table. Those are wounds of the past, and God is healing me, but even the invitation to be here has been his grace in showing me, hey, I want you here. And then also to keep that, and Pastor Ben had mentioned this before, processing the things of the past, if you don't have those opportunities from the past, but to think of the future, it's like, wow, I can't wait to have people at my table. Because then it actually fills me with a great joy of what is to come, and celebrating the things where it's like, hey, these little moments, that time we had Thai food, oof, it was so good. I can't wait to cook for somebody else and create the opportunity. And even if I didn't have that growing up as a child or growing up in my own setting, at least somebody else gets to experience that, and I get to create the opportunity for them.
I would also just encourage you, learn to love yourself. You won't be able to receive love from others if you haven't learned how to appreciate what God has given you as an individual. Like the first love you ever receive is the love of God poured out in who you are. And so you really do have to like love yourself in that. But yeah. Last question, and then we're going to wrap up because it's like lunchtime.
I literally have so many questions, but I will keep it concise. My name's Jessica. I just became a lead pastor in September in Northern Ontario. And I have seen like a lot of people use being relational as an excuse to not actually do the work of ministry, like admin and that kind of thing. So I just wanted to like ask if you could really quickly speak to like maybe some systems you have in place and some admin to talk about how you don't let that stuff fall by the wayside. And I'm still intentional about like actually doing the mundane of ministry.
You love admin.
I don't love admin. It's low on my Berkman. It's just that I'm good at it. So we make sure that everyone that is a son and daughter that is on staff also knows that we're the boss. Right? That has to be something that you have to, like, you have to know how to navigate that. And we actually have a whole teaching and we work really hard on navigating that space. Accountability is like, all of these guys, they know they report to me on things. And they've all felt the pinch of going, where are your campus pastor reports? Like, why are we having these conversations now? Where's any report? Like, they get it. Like, I hold them accountable. But and we dance between, hey, you have to be accountable for this, but I love you. Like, and I actually love you. Having sons and daughters, this is one thing you have to realize. You have to teach them competency. It has taken years to get these guys to the place where they can like stand on their own 2 feet when it comes to the everyday work. But and there was times where I was a lot more involved in like telling them how to do details. I don't have to as much anymore because like I was committed to the process. So there is an element of where you have to actually teach them how to be competent sons and daughters in the activity of ministry.
Yeah, we're very clear that, and the team would tell you that to sit at our table as a staff member or as a key pastoral, you're part of a team, that we don't use family language at that table because you're a part of the team and you can get demoted off the team. But you'll always be a part of my family, and you'll always be a son and daughter of my house. I get it. But if you're not the best at what you need to be doing, and if you're not achieving the key indicators of healthy success in your area, that's a problem for the team. But we'll have a discussion about that at a team level. But you can lose your seat at the table of team. But who you are to me, and they know that and some of them have felt that pinch, but they haven't lost Emma and I. It's that discussion it's uncomfortable for everyone, but it's still mum and dad, and we still love them. But we're just also practical. Dude, you didn't do your job, or you made a big mistake. Like, that's a big enough mistake to lose your position. Sorry, dude. You won't have that seat at the team table, but you come sit at my dining table, and we'll help rehabilitate that.
Is there like potentially like an on-ramp back on to the staff?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But like I said, it's a ramp.
But we're also accountable to our church, right? So like there is also that dynamic. It's like, and we have conversations. Like, I'll just use this isn't a real life example. Matt does an incredible job. Matt, you messed up. Like we're accountable to making sure that the church has like trust in us to steward and shepherd them well. Like, we're gonna have to figure this out, and it might mean that you have to like have a process of coming back into a position. Like, but he knows we love him. Like, this isn't you messed up, you're cut off from me. It's a, you messed up, you're accountable for your decisions to the church. We all feel that. And you have to make sure that they understand that. Otherwise, they're going to think that their ministry position is tied to your love for them. It's not the same thing. It's different. And so just making sure that that's really clear in communication with them.
And I think if they could all testify, if anything, there is a higher standard and expectation we require and expect of our sons and daughters spiritually than other staff members. We just expect it because you've spent hours at our table each and every day. Therefore, you should carry this like a son and a daughter. So there is that dynamic, but it's true, and it gets worked out. And there's awesome moments, and then there's painful moments, like anything in ministry. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
All right.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. I know it went a little longer, but I know there's a lot to talk about, but our prayer is that the Holy Spirit would lead you to actually make this applicable in your life so that we can see your tables full and this fellowship full of people that are going to continue to change this nation. So God bless you. Enjoy your lunch.